say you had me in your arms, but I fell through the grasp. And yep, I had you in my heart, but I guess I relapsed. Like I'm living for the wrong reasons, through the seasons, trying to fall for you, but then they put me on blast. It's like I try to speak my mind because I know that I'm his. And yep, I try to speak my mind, but it don't fly with them kids. Man, if I'm not talking about the newest Nikes or releases, they put the mute on me. I can't speak about my Jesus like I'm living for him. I'm slipping to sin, I turn around and make the amends. I try to fit in, I mess it up and stumble again. I'm taking this pen and writing everything so I remember just how sweet that it is. Yeah, man, I got issues, I can't even lie. My only saving grace is knowing I got you inside. I'm done with saving face, I don't got a thing to hide. So don't leave me alone, keep coming day and night.
Don't leave me alone. Bust down the door to my heart, Lord, it's your home. You don't need no keys, I'm on my knees, begging you please. I gotta settle this thing once and for all. You got my heart, my soul, you can have it all. I'm on my knees, begging you please, Lord. I'm on my knees, begging you please, Lord. Don't leave me alone. Don't leave me alone.
I hear the Savior say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Sing, I hear the Savior say, I hear the Savior say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all to win my own. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow.
You just want to hit play now.
Let's stay together.
Lord, now indeed I find. Lord, now indeed I find thy power and thine alone can change the leper's spot, yeah, and melt the heart of stone. Jesus paid it all to win my own. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. Jesus paid it all to win my own. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. When before the throne I stand in him complete, Jesus died my soul to save. My lips shall still repeat, Jesus paid it all to win my own.
church, and welcome to the Well. My name is Chris Shade, and I am very glad to be here with you today. So, each week, before church with my kids, we have a devotion, fun time that we usually do, and we pick last few months we've picked a theme. And the theme usually derives from an area of weakness in our family. And so this past month, we've been focusing on humble yourself. That's been our theme, is to humble ourselves. And through that, a lot of good discussion and some good definitions. This is my daughter Amy's definition of humility, is putting others above, which was her definition. But we've also looked at the other side of that, and this is participation here. So we have humility over here. What's on the other side? Pride, yes, pride. And Amy's definition of pride was putting yourself before others, was her definition. But on my phone, if you search humility, it's 3 times. It comes up 50 times. So obviously, God thinks it's important because he brings it up in his word a lot. And so I'm going to share a poem that I received actually many years ago from a customer, and I've shared it many times since. And this poem is called "My Name is Pride, I Am a Cheater." So here's the poem. It is anonymous. Pride, I am a cheater. I cheat you of your God-given destiny because you demand your own way. I cheat you of contentment because you deserve better than this. I cheat you of knowledge because you already know it all. Of healing because you're too full of me to forgive. I cheat you of holiness because you refuse to admit when you're wrong. I cheat you of vision because you'd rather look in the mirror than out a window. I cheat you of nobody's going to know the real you. I cheat you of love. Romance demands sacrifice. You have greatness in heaven because you refuse to wash another's feet on earth. I cheat you of God's glory because I convince you to seek your own. My name is pride. I am a cheat. You like me because you think I am always looking out for you. Untrue. I'm looking to make a fool. God has so much more for you, I admit. But don't worry. Stick with me. You will never know. So, if anyone wants a copy of it, I freely give it out all the time. But what a wonderful poem that really exposes what I believe is Satan's greatest tool. Hearts and our minds to. I want to share with you Philippians 2, 3 through 11. But in humility count others. You look not only to his own interests, have this mind among yourselves, which is yours. Though he was in the form of God, did not equality with God a thing, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant. Being found in human form, he humbled himself, becoming obedient to the point of even death on a cross. Therefore, so that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth, and every tongue confess to the glory of God the Father. And so today, turn our eyes to worshiping. Let's humble ourselves with gratitude and give praise to our Savior. So, would you pray, please? Lord, we just thank you. Lord, we thank you for so many things. Lord, we thank you for your word, which teaches us your truth. We thank you for your spirit, which dwells within us as believers. And Father, we just thank you for your ultimate gift of humble sacrifice on the cross for us, Lord. And Father, you came into the world as a baby, the most humble form there is. And Father, you died for our sins, beaten and spit on and tortured. And Father, You have been the ultimate example of humility. And so, Father, we come before you today with hearts filled with joy and gratitude. And, Father, may we just humble ourselves, knowing our position. You are the Creator. We are your creation. And may we worship you today, Lord, through the preaching of your word and the singing of song. And so, Father, we lift this time up to you. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Would you please stand as we worship.
Come set your rule and reign in our hearts again. Increase in us, we pray. Unveil what we made. Come set our hearts ablaze with hope, like wildfire in our very souls. Holy Spirit, come invade us now. We are your church. We need your power in us. We seek your kingdom first. We hunger and we thirst. Refuse to waste our lives. For you're our joy and prize. To see the captive hearts released, the hurt, the sick, the poor at peace. We lay down our lives for heaven's cause. We are your church. We pray revive this earth. Build your kingdom here. Let the darkness fear. Show your mighty hand. Heal our streets and land. Set your church on fire. Win this nation back. Change the atmosphere. Build your kingdom here. We pray. Unleash your kingdom's power, reaching the near and far. No force of hell can stop your beauty changing hearts. You made us for much more than this. Awake the kingdom seed in us. Fill us with the strength and love of Christ. We are your church. We are the hope on earth. Build your kingdom here. Let the darkness fear. Show your mighty hand. Heal our streets and land. Set your church on fire. Win this nation back. Change the atmosphere. Build your kingdom here. We pray. Build your kingdom here. Let the darkness fear. Show your mighty hand. Heal our streets and land. Set your church on fire. Win this nation back. Change the atmosphere. Build your kingdom here. We pray.
Romans 5:1. Therefore, since we have been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. Isn't that a hope? So sing this song with me.
In tenderness he's on me, weary and sick with sin, and on his shoulders brought me back to his fold again. While angels in his presence sing, until the chords of heaven ring. Oh, the love that's on me. Oh, the blood that bought me. Oh, the grace that brought me to the fold of God. Grace that brought me to the fold of God. He died for me while I was sinning, needy and poor and blind. He whispered to assure me, I found thee, thou art mine. I never heard a sweeter voice. It made my aching heart rejoice. Oh, the love that's on me. Oh, the blood that bought me. Oh, the grace that brought me to the fold of God. Grace that brought me to the fold of God. Upon his grace I've daily pondered, and sing anew his praise. With all adoring wonder, his blessings I retrace. It seems as if eternal days are far too short to sing his praise. Oh, the love that's
All right, we shift now to worship through giving. We'll take a look at our financial update. And you'll see the October family giving, 5 monthly expenses at $6,000. In September, we had 24 family units give, October 16 so far. And as you know, our goal is to have 40 family units giving $195 a month as we continue to focus on trying to be financially independent in the future. So there are ways to give. Online you can give. You can also give in the giving box in the back corner over there or by the door here, or places that you can submit your gifts. And then we'll also take a look at the missions giving. As you know, we are blessed to have those that support us through missions, and we try to do the same through our giving and to give to some of the other ministries. And I think Bryce is pulling that up for us. So far, Acts 29 this year. In 2019, we've given $500, Converge and SBC, about $19.55, and then to the blocks, $14.88. And so we're thankful to be able to support those ministries as we've been supported. And today, we're going to lift up in prayer the SBC. And so if you bow with me, let's lift up SBC. Father, Lord, we just thank you for the ways that you sustain us as a church. And Father, today specifically, we want to lift up the SBC. Father, their ministry throughout the world. And Lord, we just thank you that they have a heart for missions as well. And Lord, as they have allowed us as a church plant to grow and given us stability. And so, Father, we praise you for that heart that you've given them. We pray, Lord, that you would continue to develop leaders through that ministry, through that church, and other church plants too. And Father, we just think globally for your glory. And so, Father, thank you for the SBC. In your name, amen. And before we shift gears to dismiss kids, we do need Will and Joe to come on up here, please. All right. Sorry, we threw the script off today.
Father, we thank you so much for your love for us, Lord. This church, body of Christ, Father. Father, we pray for those who need to hear the message of the gospel. Thank you, Father. Amen. Take 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Oh, yeah.
And before the throne, I stand in Him complete. Jesus died my soul to save. My lips shall still repeat. Jesus paid it all. To Him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. Jesus paid it all. To Him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. Praise the one, oh praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Jesus paid it all.
And I just want to invite you to maybe find a seat real fast. You know, we can be a good social church on Sunday morning, so I'm thankful for that. Thankful to be with you guys this morning, worshiping the Lord together, and now ready to get into God's Word together. We're going to be in Joshua chapter 5. Continuing our study through the book of Joshua. And I just want to say that the study in Joshua has been good for my heart and for my mind. And I have prayed for us by name on the list that I have often in the last 5 weeks as we've begun this study, in a chapter at a time each week. I've just been praying that the Lord would continue to reveal more of himself to us and give us victory in places of our lives where needed. So Joshua chapter 5 is where we're going to be. I do want to do something that I think is really important this morning. We're going to take a few minutes before we go to Joshua 5, and we want to talk about something else that is important. I want to cast some vision, if you will, for the future of our church family. Our elder team, as that's being developed, and then most of you know we have an external advisory board that helps to direct and guide as we plant. Been planting for 7 years now, and by God's grace, here we are today. And I know we have some people missing this morning, but those two groups, our internal elder board and our external advisory board, have been working together to find what we think would be the best way to cast a clear and a compelling and an inviting vision for us to not merely be a sustained church family in this community, but a thriving church family. You guys have heard me say that I do not believe that God has called us to merely survive, but we all know what survival mode is like, right? We go through those seasons. I do not believe that God has called us to merely survive. I believe that he has called us to thrive. And so I'm trying to find ways to cast that vision for what it means and for what it looks like for us to thrive ahead as a church plant as we grow. And so my privilege this morning is to be the guy that gets to stand in front of you and try to take those conversations that our leadership groups have been having and take a few minutes and try to quantify that or make it make sense to us. And so as I do, I'm going to fumble around a little bit, but I really want to invite you to listen to what I'm saying and then give me a constructive feedback, ask questions. We're going to take the next few weeks to try to continue to cast this vision just a few minutes before we preach each week. So here's the way I want to say it this week. There'll be some slides on the screen for you. The bottom line for us as a church family is that we want to be a church that does really good ministry right here in this neighborhood, right? We want to thrive in that and reach people with the gospel of Jesus. But we also are not just about us and not just about the neighborhood that we're in, but we want to be about planting churches and supporting more missionaries to the ends of the earth, right? That seems to be the Great Commission in Scripture, that we would make disciples to the ends of the earth of all tribes, all tongues, all nations. And so what that means for us is that we need to thrive ahead of our $7,800 a month budget. Okay, that's our budget. Our expense budget is $7,800 a month, which is small for a church, but we are a small but growing church, might be a better way to say it too. And as we think about what it looks like to thrive ahead of a $7,800 a month budget, you have to do a reality check, right? Not many of us like reality checks. I remember when I went to the doctor years ago when the doc was like, Joe, reality check. Stop working so much, start eating better, get your blood pressure down, right? So reality checks are important for our ongoing continued health. Not always fun though, but here is a couple of things on the next slide that just help us to frame up a reality check for us right now. Again, current monthly budget, $7,800 a month, okay? That's what we have set, so we've agreed on as a church family. In the month of September, 27 actual people with faces and names gave a total of $4,750, okay? So that is something to celebrate. We need to celebrate that. You might be asking the question, why are we celebrating that? Well, if you've been with us long enough, you know there were seasons where we're bringing in, and I remember the earliest days when there was 10 of us meeting in our living room where there was like offerings were like $10 a week. So over 2 years ago, just 2 years ago, that number, we weren't anywhere close to that. A lot of you know that. So that is something to celebrate for sure. And the other thing that I think that first number, reality check, shows us is that we're almost there. Right? In terms of the gap between what came in September and what our monthly expense is, we're almost there. So you might visualize it like climbing up a mountain, right? You're 3/4 of the way up, You're almost there. Let's not stop 3/4 of the way up and stay there or go back down. Let's continue to the top of the mountain, right? Let's continue into that place of victory, thriving at the top of the mountain. So the bottom line for that, though, is in the reality check is this is doable. This doesn't feel so undoable to us anymore. It'd still be a miraculous move of God for us to make it, right? We know how many churches get started every year that don't make it. So reality check, we know it's still going to be a miracle for us. The other part of the reality check is back in October, or this month so far, 16 individual people, again, faces and names, have given $1,600 and $1,655. And we still got another week or so this month. Another way of looking at this, I think you can see on the screen, is that our current average, this is our current giving average or trend in 2019. If Joe, who's our treasurer, the other Joe, Nelson, the one who's better looking, a little bit older than me, if we just take, if the two of us, him as a treasurer, and we just take the report from 2019, January till today, and we look at individual names on a list who have given anywhere from one time this year to multiple times a month, okay? The range is, it's range. What we see is that we have 39 people that have given a total amount. You take that total amount that's been given by our internal church family, you divide that by the 39 faces, 39 names, and what you get is $26 a week. Okay, so that's a reality. You need to let that sink in. That might not, I don't know, for some that might feel like, wow, $26 a week, that's really good for our family. That's great if that's you. And for some of you, it might be, oh man, I $26 a week, I'd probably do a little better than that. So I don't know where you're at in that list, in that lineup, but 39 people have given a total amount that averages out $26 a week. So for us to thrive ahead, if you look at the next slide, for us to thrive ahead of that $7,800 a month budget, then if we just target the 39 people who have said, hey, you know what? I put my money where my mouth is, right? This is my church family. I'm investing and buying into that. If we just target the 39 people who have said that and try to encourage and challenge us as a group of 39, then it would take for those 39 of us to give $48 a week for us to thrive ahead. So just think about the difference in the gap between the average of 26 to 48, okay? Wherever you're at in this whole spectrum. So $48 a week would not merely sustain us and help us survive. $48 a week, we would thrive ahead of our budget. And we would be able to do things like support more missionaries and more church planters, okay? That kind of thriving doesn't mean Joe gets a massive raise. That kind of thriving means we get to support more church planting and the gospel going to the ends of the earth. Now, another way of looking at this would be on the next slide. We could grow to 51 people. If we grew to 51 people and thinking about it this way, 51 people tithing on minimum wage. That's important, I think, for us to think that way. If we just think minimum wage, I don't know what everybody in this congregation makes. I don't see your paycheck, right? I don't see your bank accounts. So if we just took the minimum wage, $9 an hour, 40 hours a week, 51 people, that's $36 a week. We would trend ahead of our monthly budget. We would move from $7,800 in expenses to $7,956 in income. So do the math. That's $156 extra every month that you can send to a church planter or a missionary. And I can't begin to tell you, as a guy who's raised funds for 7 years to do this, I can't tell you how large $156 is for a missionary to see in their bank account support every month. So I want to lay that in front of us as a vision, and I want to ask, would you please ask the Lord how he wants you to join in on this vision? Also want to encourage you, don't hesitate to reach out to any of our elder team, especially if you have any questions. You can talk to me. If I'm too scary for you, then that's fine. Talk to Nelson. Nelson is like really easy to talk to, right? He's always smiling and laughing. You could talk to Chris in the back as well, or you could talk to Micah over here as well. Any of us would be happy to talk with you about those financial things and those goals. The last thing I want you to hear me say is I want you to hear me say thank you. Thank you to those of you who are giving consistently and faithfully and sacrificially. I say those words intentionally. Thank you for giving consistently and faithfully and sacrificially. I personally am grateful for every one of you who has leaned into this ministry that way. Planting a church It's the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. And this is not personal, but there is something personal in that, right? Because as a pastor, there is something personal in that. The hardest thing I've ever done. And I am personally grateful for each of you who has leaned in that way consistently, faithfully, sacrificially. What you're doing by doing that is you're proving that you're not only a consumer of this church family, but you are also a contributor to the ministry of this church family. So thank you. Again, faithful, consistent, sacrificial. I am personally proud to be running this race with you. My prayer is that many more would join our ranks. And the last thing I want to say is I want to remind us of our mission and our vision as our elder team has been working on this. This is kind of where we're at. We're thankful that you have joined in that. We hope that others would join in on this too as we do what? Run a rescue mission within the art of hell. That's been our longest lasting statement, tattooed on my arm. Many of you know the story. We run a rescue mission within the art of hell so that we can make disciples, so that we can reach this neighborhood south of the tracks, if not the entire city, if not all the way to the ends of the earth, right? We want to run a rescue mission within the art of hell so that we can be a church family that is full of mission-minded disciples who exist for the glory of God and the good, not just of this city, but the good of the nations. And as we do that, we want to proclaim the gospel well. We want to plant members in a church family that stick and stay and reach out. We want to train leaders. We want to empower and enable missionaries to go to the ends of the earth. That's our big, broad statement. And I can just tell you, if that doesn't win the day, and if that doesn't set in, right, if God doesn't take that vision and that mission and create a family that is doing just that, then he never planned to in the first place, if that makes sense. So I trust and believe, based on the results that we're looking at, that God's hand is in what we are about. And I am, again, personally thankful for you. Please pray and ask the Lord what it looks like for you to join in on that. It might mean for some of us that we go back and we look at our personal finances and we go, I need to do some reworking, right? So if that's where you're at and you need help with that too, like we want to help you with that. We believe at the end of the day that the way that we handle our finances is a direct outcome of the way that the gospel of Jesus Christ has affected us. Why? Because Jesus was so generous, so consistent, so obedient, so sacrificial in giving his life away that we model the gospel in our giving and our support of the gospel. So I want to lay that down and leave it alone. I want to say thank you. Again, give me some feedback when we get done here today. If there's anything I could say better. This is definitely a hard thing to ask for, right? So no self-pity in that, but I want to be clear that I am available and I want to be approachable. So as we cast that vision, we want there to be a compelling and a clear and a vision that would be inviting for us to go thrive. So jump into Joshua 5. Okay. Joshua chapter 5. I'll wait till Patrick gets done. Is everybody there? I assume everybody's there in Joshua 5, right? Let's do this. Let's have everybody stand. And we've been doing this every week. Let's everybody stand for the reading of God's word. As you are able, if you got bad knees, bad back, whatever it may be, standing is hard for you, don't do it. But if you can, please stand and we'll read God's word. Follow along with me. Joshua chapter 5. As soon as all the kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan to the west, and all the kings of the Canaanites who were by the sea, heard that the Lord had dried up the waters of the Jordan for the people of Israel until they had crossed over, their hearts melted. There was no longer any spirit in them because of the people of Israel. At that time, the Lord said to Joshua, make flint knives and circumcise the sons of Israel a second time. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the sons of Israel at Gibeath Haraloth. And this is the reason why Joshua circumcised them. All the males of the people who came out of Egypt, all the men of war, had died in the wilderness on the way after they had come out of Egypt. Though all the people who came out had been circumcised, yet all the people who were born on the way in the wilderness after they had come out of Egypt had not been circumcised. For the people of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness until all the nation, the men of war who came out of Egypt, perished because they did not obey the voice of the Lord. The Lord swore to them that he would not let them see the land that the Lord had sworn to their fathers to give to us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So it was their children whom he raised up in their place that Joshua circumcised, for they were uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. When the circumcising of the whole nation was finished, they remained in their places in the camp until they were healed. The Lord said to Joshua, "Today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you." So the name of that place is called Gilgal to this day. While the people of Israel were encamped at Gilgal, they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month, in the evening on the plains of Jericho. And the day after the Passover, on that very day, they ate of the produce of the land, unleavened cakes and parched grain. And the manna ceased the day after they ate of the product of the land, produce of the land. And there was no longer manna for the people of Israel, but they ate of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. When Joshua was by Jericho, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing before him with his drawn sword in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said to him, "Are you for us or for our adversaries?" And he said, "No, but I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come." And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped and said to him, "What does my Lord say to his servant?" And the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, "Take off your sandals from your feet. The place where you are standing is holy." Joshua did so. Father, I ask that you would come, bless the preaching of your word, Father, and cause your word to do a work inside of our hearts and our minds this morning, a work of transformation and change. In Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen. You may be seated. This passage is obviously, for me, moving, as you can tell. You're supposed to cry at the end of the sermon, not in the midst of reading the text. At least that's what they teach you in preaching school. That's not true. Not true. When I ask you this question, I want you to write down the answer to it at any point in time when the Holy Spirit gives you the answer. What is it in your life that you are seeking spiritual victory in right now? Place in your life where you're just begging God, you're leaning into God and you're saying, "I need victory in this area of my life." Something that you've been seeking for a long time. I don't know what that is, but you do and the Lord does, and I trust Him to speak it to you. What is that place in your heart, your mind, your life where you are seeking spiritual victory? The reality, I found this quote on the screen in front of us. I found this quote in a book this week. It says, "The prerequisite for spiritual victory is renewed trust in and obedience to the Lord." That's the prerequisite for spiritual victory, is trust and obedience. When you look at this text that I just read, the Lord has just done a really miraculous thing in bringing the Israelites across a flooded Jordan River. If you put yourself in the shoes of the Israelites on this day during this passage, it would make absolute total sense to storm the gates of the city of Jericho, right? Verse 1 tells us that the kings of their enemies' hearts were melting like butter under a hot knife. Well, you don't wait at that moment. You charge the gates of that city. That's not the way the Lord does His work, though. The Lord's timing is not our timing. The Lord is not motivated by the urgency of victory over His enemies. It doesn't motivate Him. Victory over His enemies is a piece of cake for Him. The Lord, I think, is more concerned, as you look at this passage, with His own people's capacity to trust Him and to obey Him as they walk into spiritual victory. I think that's the Lord's concern. That's why I say it, the prerequisite for spiritual victory is renewed trust in and obedience to the Lord. So as you look at this text, And you'll see on the next slide, which will be the only slide we've got for you for the rest of the sermon. Lots of reasons, but basically 3 things that are broken down in this text that I've seen and outlined. So if you're an outliner, you got it. You see Israel basically renewing their trust and renewing their obedience to the Lord through the practice of circumcision, number 1, through the observance of the Passover, number 2, and then through worshiping God's presence, number 3. So if we look at these 3 things, trust that the Lord will speak to each of us about that area of our lives that we're seeking victory in. First thing that we notice is that Israel needs to trust and obey God, and the way that they're going to do that is through circumcision. Right? At first glance, you might not think, well, that seems like a really big deal, but it is. Verses 2 through 9. I'm going to unpack this for us. And as we think about circumcision, as we look at what happens in these verses 2 through 9, there's a quote from an author who says this, says, we cannot expect God's blessings to be seen in public obedience to God's commands. So I want you to think about what I just said. Don't miss this. We cannot expect God's blessing to be seen, visibly observed in public obedience to God's commands if there is hidden compromise in the private world of the self and the family. So you might take that personally, but you think about that corporately for a church, right? You think about that corporately for a church. Sunday mornings, we all look a certain way. But if, as a church family, we have a certain way of behaving here on Sunday mornings and in our community, in our neighborhood, right? That if in the background, in our private familial lives, there is hidden compromise and sin, we can expect no public blessing. None. Because it would be called hypocrisy, right? This is why the Lord commands Joshua to make some knives out of some rocks and circumcise the men of Israel. Joshua, more than happy to obey the Lord. It's important to note here too, as you're looking at this, that God says to do this a second time, right? It might be something that caught you. He says, do this a second time, verse 2. He says that, it's kind of a play on language, but he says that because circumcision had been instituted a long time ago under Abraham's leadership, many generations earlier, all the way back in the book of Genesis, chapter 17. Okay, so you go all the way back there, the first place it was instituted. And it was instituted then with Abraham as what you would call a covenant, but it's a sign. It's a sign of Israel's trust and obedience to the Lord. It was a visible sign, their trust and their obedience. And then you move forward in the story. From Genesis, you move forward to Exodus, and you see Moses. Right? Moses, you might remember, is who Joshua was the assistant to. So you got Abraham who institutes it, then you have Moses. There's this episode where God comes to Moses at the burning bush, right? And that's going to be significant. To keep the burning bush open in your mind. Don't close that box. We're going to go there again later. He encounters God at the burning bush, and God calls him to go confront Pharaoh for his abuse of God's people. Now, Moses gives God like 10 reasons on a list why we shouldn't do this, God. I'm not your guy. Go find somebody else, Lord. That's kind of the way it ends. Very next verse, right after that. This is Exodus, I remember right, Exodus chapter 4. Very next verse in chapter 4 says that God is so angry with Moses that he almost kills him. Now, could be because Moses has resisted God in trusting him obediently, right? We think of Moses like a hero, but let's not forget, every hero in the Bible is just as big of a coward and a sinner as you and I are oftentimes. So on the one side, it could be his resistance to the call of God on his life, but if you take this principle back a little bit further, we find as you read this story that Moses had neglected his family, ministry to his family. He had not circumcised his son. His wife, Zipporah, figures it out, and she's like, crap, my husband's going to die, circumcise the son, touch the foreskin to the feet of Moses. Kind of a really weird, gruesome story to be thinking about. And God relents. So first story is Abraham. Second story is Moses. These are some of the things that we see in Scripture as we look at circumcision. Circumcision is an issue of trust and obedience, and it has dire consequences for disobedience. And the people of Israel apparently had not been circumcised during the time of their wilderness wanderings after coming out of Egypt. And here's the thing. Victory in the promised land would be absolutely useless to the Israelites if they were in danger of experiencing the wrath of God against their sin. Why have victory in the promised land if God's just going to annihilate you for your private disobedience? Right? Why have public blessing? Privately, you're under God's wrath. That's the seriousness of what's taking place here. Well, thankfully, Israel has just experienced the miraculous move of the Lord in bringing them across the flooded Jordan River after years of wandering around the consequences of their sin. Anybody else here ever experienced that? You spent years wandering around the consequences of your sin, whether it's your pride, it's your anger, lust, hatred, whatever it is, complacency, laziness, whatever it is. You spent years wandering around that, and then you have these moments, these mountaintop moments, where God shows up, He does something miraculous, and He brings you across the river, right? He brings you across that, and you go, oh man. And then immediately He shows you, hey, there's something else I want to work on now. We're not done yet. We're not in heaven yet. Every time you and I think we've arrived, we find out that God's up to more. We're not complete. Don't let that cause despair in you to know that. Let that cause joy in you to know that. Let that cause hope in you to know that you look forward to a place that is better and different than here. Right? Thankfully, Israel has experienced that. So their response to the Lord's command to be circumcised, it was obeyed instead of ignored. So I want you to imagine how hard it must have been to trust and obey in this moment for Israel. Put yourself in Israel's shoes. Their enemies were frightened. Like I said earlier, seems like the most opportune time to move ahead with an all-out assault on Jericho. But God's plan is what? God's plan is to take His people and put them under the knife to prove their trust and their obedience in and to Him. So I would imagine that the pain of enduring circumcision as an adult would have been excruciating. I was not circumcised as an adult. Circumcised a baby, so I don't remember it. But I'm just imagining the sensitivity of the area of the body that we're talking about and the kind of pain that God is causing His people to endure before they taste full victory. There's a principle in this to think about. No pain, no gain, right? Victory would have been useless had they not experienced this pain first, I believe. So, I imagine that. I imagine the fear. I imagine the fear in this moment for Israel of knowing, if I'm in their shoes, that I could not actually physically fight the enemy. You think about that, right? All of Israel's fighting, warring men, they're in a hospital bed. And the most sensitive parts of their body are bandaged up in pain. If Israel's enemies hear about this and decide to make a move, they're absolutely helpless, aren't they? You're not going to jump out of your bed and defend yourself, are you? Isn't this exactly where the Lord wants us, though? Doesn't He need us to move out of our self-sufficiency and into complete dependence upon Him so that He might show us that He alone is able? Isn't that what's needed? So I can imagine the excruciating agony of waiting whatever period of time it takes to heal from this kind of surgical operation. Scholars argue all sorts of different ways about this. From the dating of the text, go back to the previous chapter, seems like it might have been 4 days. That seems hard to received, so it could have been longer. Later on, the text says that they ate of the fruit of the land that year. Could mean for a year. Could mean it was just whatever year it was. So don't really know. Whatever time it took, doesn't matter. Whatever time it took, there would have been agony of waiting that period of time to heal from that kind of surgical operation, waiting upon the Lord for His timing. Nevertheless, in the midst of all this, what you see, what comes clearly to the surface is Joshua is obedient in verse 3, and Israel is obedient in verse 4, and the result of their obedience is that the Lord takes away the reproach or the stains of Israel's sin, right? That they are now known. They've been known for 40 years, wandering around in the wilderness for their disobedience. They're no longer known for that. God rolls away that reproach in these moments. They're now known for their trust, their obedience to the Lord. Isn't that what we would want the neighborhood south of the tracks here in Hastings to know about the people of the well? That in the face of anything, we would trust Him and we would obey Him. Isn't that what we would want? Isn't that what the Lord would want? Isn't that what it means to bring glory and honor to His name, not only to this city, but to the ends of the earth? This really is an image of faith-filled, obedient action on the part of God's people. Now, I do think it's really important to note briefly here that the physical act of circumcision there in the Old Testament, physical act of circumcision in the Old Testament, it points to a spiritual reality for us under the new covenant. In other words, you have physical circumcision over here before the cross of Christ in the Old Testament. That physical circumcision before the cross of Christ, it points to a spiritual reality for those of us on the other side of the cross, where we are at today. Both point to trust and obedience. Both of them. That physical thing that we observe in the Old Testament has its spiritual implications for us today. The New Testament writers are clear that the circumcision does not save you. You read some of the epistles in the New Testament, you'll find that as they planted churches throughout the New Testament, one of the major issues that kept coming up was this: man, to be saved, you got to be circumcised. And the New Testament epistles and the apostles were clear. Hey, listen, that physical act didn't save you. It's a spiritual thing that needs to take place. It's by faith. It's by trust in what God promises in the cross of Christ that the result of salvation comes. So you can track this doctrine down in passages like Colossians 2:11-12, Philippians 3:3, which actually Chris read from Philippians 3 this morning. So that's an interesting, I didn't know he was going to share. He didn't know I'm preaching this, so that's the Holy Spirit at work. For the sake of time, though, I want to get moving on. I want to say that when someone surrenders their life, if I haven't been clear, when someone surrenders their life to Jesus, when someone trusts in Christ's work at the cross, when that person is baptized in water into the family of God, when that person's life has got to be marked by faith-filled, obedient lifestyle. Once again, the prerequisite for spiritual victory is a deep and abiding trust in and obedience to the Lord. Two, Israel needs to trust and obey God through the Passover, right? Verses 10-12. Move on from circumcision now. Don't close the box completely, but let's move to a different box. Think about Passover. It's the next thing that kind of happens in our text, verses 10-12. As I look at it, as I study the verses, as I read the commentaries, it doesn't appear that the Israelites stopped celebrating the Passover in the wilderness wandering. So while circumcision didn't happen, it needs to be reinstituted, the Passover was most likely being observed. Numbers 9:1-5 at least makes that truth presumably clear. So you can check that out in Numbers 9 if you want to. So I don't think the issue here is necessarily, again, reinstituting something that they had stopped doing. I think the issue is continuing to experience the blessings of the Passover through trust and obedience. So if you understand the story of the Passover, you might remember that the Passover is just simply God's death angel passing over a home because it's marked by the blood of the sacrificial lamb, right? It's back in Exodus. And that whole story points to the reality that we have in Christ. That because of Christ at the cross, death no longer has a hold on us. It's no longer our enemy. We're going to die someday, but we have a promised land on the other side of that that's our spiritual reality. So, Passover. It's interesting as you look back at the story of the Passover in Exodus chapter 12. Again, the first institution of the Passover, where that angel of death passed over the houses that were marked by the blood of the sacrificial lamb. That sacrificial lamb was slain on what day, do you think? The 14th day of the month. The 14th day of the month. I'll say it again. The 14th day of the month. Now look back at your text. When does it say that they practiced the Passover here? On the 14th day of the month. This detail is really important because it tells us this. It tells us that Israel was behaving in full trust and full obedience to their promise-keeping, life-saving God. Trusting God results in faith-filled, obedient behavior to the extent that they would even pay attention to the exact day of the month to observe Passover. You move down, you look at verses 11 through 12. 11 through 12 add some further importance to this. The author of Joshua explains that immediately after the Passover, after they observed that on the 14th day, the people of Israel ate of the fruit of the promised land. Right? When the blessing of the fruit of the promised land, it followed their trust and obedience in circumcision, and it followed their trust and obedience through the Passover. But the point here is so significant in regards to this eating of the fruit of the land, so significant that you might notice the author of Joshua draws our attention to that point that they ate of the fruit of the land 3 times. 3 times the author repeats that. You might not notice that on initial reading, that he repeats that 3 times. You might be saying, why are you pressing the point? Point here is that God's blessings abound over and over and over again in response to what? That's right, in response to our obedience. You look all throughout the Old Testament, and that is the theme that you see. Even all throughout the New Testament, it's the theme that you see. Grace is not laid aside by the preaching of trust and obedience. Trust and obedience is actually the outcome and the result of a work of grace in our lives. When somebody lives in absolute licentiousness, that's not the result of a work of grace. Blessing is the result. Obedience and trust. And obedience and trust is a result of a work of grace. The prerequisite for spiritual victory is a deep and abiding trust in and obedience to the Lord. Finally, number 3, Israel's trust and obedience results in God's presence, verses 13 through 15. Israel's trust and obedience results in God's presence. Now, I do want to combat something. Way too easy for us to read this text, hear this kind of a sermon through the eyes and the ears of a so-called prosperity gospel. Y'all have heard me rant about it enough, but I think it's really important that even for those of us who are like, man, I don't buy into a prosperity gospel, we're Americans. The prosperity gospel has soaked and saturated so many things that I don't think that we really get how much it actually affects us. So good for me to pause for a moment, I think. Say this, too easy for us to believe that if we do right things, then I will experience health, wealth, and physical prosperity. Too easy for us to buy into that. There are some small elements of truth, as I've been preaching, in the fact that when I do right things, then things generally go well, such as I change the oil in my car is going to last a little bit longer. If I don't try to cook food on high, and I cook it on medium, it's going to cook a lot better, right? So there's general principles in this that are absolutely true. If I'm faithful to my wife, my marriage is going to be a lot healthier, right? So doing the right thing does produce good results in general, but not always in specific. Maybe would be a good way of saying it, right? Like every prophet in the Old Testament did the right thing, and what happened to them? Jesus did the right thing, and what happened to him? Okay, so it's important for us to not forget that the real result of trusting the Lord, the real result of obeying the Lord, is the blessing of the presence of the Lord. David, when he prayed in Psalm 51, take not your spirit from me, was simply praying, don't take your presence from me. Oh, I made a mistake so bad, he says. Don't take your presence from me. That's the real result of trusting and obeying God. His presence would be with you. See, the physical blessing of the promised land that we're reading about here, that physical blessing of the promised land, it's only designed to awaken our desire for the spiritual reality of heaven in the perfect presence of our Savior God, where there is no more sin, there's no more pain, there's no more shame, there's no more guilt, there's no more tears. Everything that you or I could possibly be seeking total and complete spiritual victory in. Whatever that is that you put on your list when I first started out. Anything. The full and complete victory in that area will be once and for all dealt with when you walk into heaven. You notice, you look now at verses 13 through 15, that Joshua, he's out wandering around Jericho. He encounters a man, right? It's possible that Joshua was taking a walk, maybe to strategize about how they would attack Jericho. Probably what I would be doing. Maybe he's reliving the miraculous things that the Lord had done so far in their midst. Maybe he's enjoying a leadership win. That would be a really good leadership win, that every man in your congregation, grown man, listened to you and said, yeah, cut me up with some rock knives. Just maybe. I mean, there's a lot less things that we probably try to call each other to as men that we're like, why won't he do this? So maybe he's celebrating that with the Lord. Trust me, I don't think you're ever going to see a day when I get up on this stage and say, guys, rock knives, let's go. It's possible that that's what he was doing, was just enjoying that experience, just of Israel's obvious trust, obvious obedience to the Lord through that circumcision and through the Passover. But either way, Joshua encounters a man standing right in front of him in full battle dress, with his sword drawn for the fight. I don't know if you can experience this the way that I experience this text. You can experience my emotion, but this is a big moment. Joshua's question in verse 13, it'd probably be the question that I would ask. Probably be the question that you would ask. It's an appropriate question, right? Hey, are you for me, or are you for them? Who are you for? It's appropriate, but it's the wrong question. It's an appropriate question, but it's the wrong question. You find this in the man's response. Who do you fight for, me or them? His answer is no. No, but no to both sides of your question. I don't fight for either one of you. There's only one person that can answer the question that way. Okay? I'm not fighting for either one of you. I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come. I'm here. You're not alone. In other words, he says, I haven't come here to take sides. I came here to take over. What's Joshua's response? He falls flat on his face in worship. There's only one reason for that. This is Jesus. Can you imagine what it would be like? Have Jesus come and stand in front of you, say, I'm here, never leaving you, never forsaking you, you'll never be alone. No, I am in charge. I'm taking over. Those circumstances in your life, they don't rule you. I will give you the victory. Can you hear the voice of your Father today saying that to you? Now, in this moment, that's the power of preaching. It's the power of His Word, as He would say that to you. God is the only being that could receive worship this way. This man with his sword out in his full battle dress, he didn't rebuke Joshua. It's the same experience. Go back to the burning bush. The man that trained Joshua to never seek victory outside of the presence of God. And God gives Joshua the same experience that He gave Moses. Oh, that we would pray that God would reveal Himself to and through us this way. What do you think? Prerequisite for spiritual victory is a deep and abiding trust in and obedience to the Lord. No. In conclusion, I have to say that Chris talked about humility this morning, and I had planned to say this, so I feel like it's providential. I don't know where each of you is at this morning. I know many of you. We're small enough for me to know enough of us. I know some things about you. How easy it could be for me as a pastor to fall into pride and think, because I know some things about most of each of you in this room, that I know everything. I'm limited. I'm really, really limited. God is unlimited. There's no limitation upon what He knows and what He can do in you, in us, in this neighborhood, and to the ends of the earth. No limitation for Him. He, I believe, has stepped in and said, I'm here and I've taken over. And so you don't need me to make really slick applications, all the pragmatic stuff that would be easy for me to lean into, like here's how you can raise your kids better, and here's how you can manage your finances better, and here's how you can love your wife better. Good things. And I don't know what your unique sin is. I don't know what kind of pain or brokenness or mistrust or fury that you walked in with today, and I don't know what your wilderness consequences have been like. I don't know where you are asking God for victory right now, but you do, and the Lord does. And I do know that spiritual victory is the result of trusting and obeying Jesus as our Savior and King. Many of us want to be saved from the fires of hell, but we don't want to fully surrender to a king. We want fire insurance, but we don't want someone to rule us. We like to take God off the throne and put ourselves on it. We're just like Israel, really. We're fearful, sinful, rebellious. Now, I don't know what your barrier is today for you. I pray that God's torn some of that down for you through the preaching of His Word today. I do know this: Jesus gave His life at a cross on Calvary. And when he gave his life on that cross and he was resurrected 3 days later in this awesome display of victory over Satan, sin, and death. Now listen to me. Death may very well be our most feared human enemy. It may be the one thing that all of us fear the most, whether we're willing to admit it or not, because we're all going to die someday. Death comes for every person. And yet death has been swallowed up by the death of Christ. Death itself may seem like an unstoppable force that swallows up life after life. But even that fearful enemy has been swallowed up by the death of Christ. Jesus, according to Philippians 3, was completely obedient to death at the cross on your behalf as he trusted his Father in his sacrifice so that you and I could experience his perfect presence forever. Is there any reason why you wouldn't want to fall on your face right now and worship this Savior King? Is there any reason why you wouldn't want to? If you're here, you've never trusted in Christ as your Savior, you can right now, in the next few moments. And trust him right now. And we'd like to pray with you about that if that's you during our time of communion. If you're here and you've trusted in Jesus, but you've been wandering around in the wilderness and the consequences of your sin for longer than you can remember, and you have an area in your life of victory that you have been begging God to step into and give you victory for, might I conclude with you that it very well could be that you need to renew your trust and your obedience in your Savior. Not that you can get resaved. That would be a heresy. But that you can renew your commitment and trust and obedience to the Lord out of the fact that his grace is sufficient for you. So regardless of where you're at today, you can experience victory, I believe, over your sin and over your shame and over your guilt, over your fear, over your pain, over your rebellion, over whatever area of your life that you are seeking victory in. You can experience that because spiritual victory is the result of trusting in and obeying God, your King, Jesus. Amen? We pray. Father, as we close, I pray that you would come and be powerfully present with us, that you would help us to worship you in spirit and in truth. Trust you to answer that prayer this morning. In Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen. As we close with communion. 3 stations in the front. One on your left, one on your right, one in the center. A 4th one in the back under the big clock. Stations on your left and on your right, and under the clock, there will be somebody at those 3 stations to pray with you and to serve you those elements. If you've just given your life to Jesus today and you just surrendered to him, we want to pray with you at one of those stations and serve you communion. If you're with us and you're not yet a believer and you're like, man, I don't know that I'm there yet, don't take communion yet because it would be meaningless and we don't want to ask people to do meaningless things. Might be just that if you're here and that's you, you might just sense that you need prayer for something. And in that case, please come. Come to me, come to one of those 3 stations, and we'd like to pray with you. 4th station in the front is just for you to come alone if you just need to spend time between you and Jesus. The way that we take communion is we take the loaf of bread that is here at each station and we tear a piece off of it and we dip it in the juice as a reminder that Jesus' body was broken and his blood was poured out, shed on our behalf. And that pays the price and justifies us, makes us right with God, and therefore we can be in his presence forever. So that's the way we take communion. I pray that the Spirit of God will lead you as we head into that time. So please stand with me. Let's close.
Before we sing these next songs, I just want to just listen to the choruses of each of these songs and the message we just heard right now. Magnify the Lord with me. Come exalt his name together. Glorify the Lord with me. Come and exalt his name forever. Next song. I'm running to your arms. I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world forever reign. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. To put it into perspective, we put these songs 3 months ago out. We did not know what Joe was going to be preaching today. We did not know exactly what type of sermon he was going to preach. We didn't know that. And this is God's orchestrated provision. So sing with me, please. Let's praise the Lord.
I sought the Lord, and he answered me and delivered me from every fear. Those who look on him are radiant. They'll never be ashamed. They'll never be ashamed. And this poor man cried, and the Lord heard me and saved me from my enemies. And the Son of God surrounds his saints. He will deliver them. He will deliver them. Magnify the Lord with me. Come exalt his name together. Glorify the Lord with me. Oh, come exalt his name forever. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, blessed is he, yeah, who hides in him. Oh, fear the Lord. Oh, all you saints, he'll give you everything. He'll give you everything. Magnify the Lord with me. Come exalt his name together. Glorify the Lord with me. Oh, come exalt his name forever. You are good, you are good, when there's nothing good in me. You are love, on display for all to see. You are light, when the darkness closes in. You are whole, you have covered all my sins. You are peace, when my fear is crippling. You are true, even in my wandering. You are joy, you're the reason that I sing. You are light, in you death has lost its sting. will sing. No other name. Jesus, Jesus.
Sing it out.
My heart will sing.
Hear you.
No other
name.
name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing. No other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing. No other name. Jesus, Jesus.
Can we just do a clap offering to God real quick, please? Amen.
Heaven thundered, and the world was born. Life begins and ends in the dust you formed. Fate commanded, and the mountains moved. Fear is losing ground to our hope in you. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Freedom conquered, all our chains undone. Sin defeated, Jesus has overcome. Mercy triumphed when the third day dawned. Darkness was denied and the stone was gone.
Come on.
Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your
amen, right? Yeah? Yeah? Man, I'm so thankful that you guys were here today. And as you go, we want you to stay connected. We want you to stay involved. Sunday is not all there is to it. So throughout the week, we have gospel communities. If you're not in one, you should get in one. If you want to know what a gospel community is, come talk to me. Also, we have a men's and women's days coming up where men and women get together and encourage one another and learn together and worship together. Men will be meeting here in November on the 16th, and the gals will be meeting on the 23rd. Got a question about that, come talk to me. Also, if you're a visitor, make sure that you grab a connection card and a first impression survey off the table out there, and fill them out, drop them in an offering box on the side or in the back. Again, so thankful that you guys were here today. Be praying for you this week that the Lord would just, that He would just give you His presence, right? Yeah, let's give the Lord another clap offering. Thanks for being here. Have a great week, guys.